Welcome to Mason Pot, the home of the ultimate craft infuser. You want to know how to find the perfect edible dose. Here's how you should start, in my opinion. I would start whether you're buying from a dispensary or whether you're making your own infusion at home. Start small. You can always add more. Take a little bit. If you have a 5 milligram gummy, cut a little corner off. Literally, this is a true story. My ex-girlfriend, I used to get these 2.5 little milligram Kiva Petramints things. I could eat a fucking half that thing and be fine. She would bite a little nibble off, like less than a milligram, and it would rock her world. So if you're not used to that stuff, just start low and slow. And that's where, if you're doing it at home, which is what I recommend, you can have full control of the process, know exactly what you're putting in your body, getting that full feel. You're not getting some shitty distillate from some brand that doesn't really care. You're putting in the care, you're putting in the attention, and you're making what you want to make. So my number one recommendation for people at home is make a infused MCT oil or olive oil. Then simply take a tincture bottle. If you're not familiar with a tincture bottle, it's just like a little dropper, just a little droplet thing. Pull some of that up and just drop like one drop on top to a top of a gummy. Eat that gummy. Literally one drop. If you don't feel anything, that's fine. Chances are you might. If you didn't, next time add 2 or 3 drops. You'll probably feel it if you've never had an edible before. If you don't, next time put 5, 10 drops. If you don't feel that, next time do what I do and just take a couple syringes. You'll definitely feel that because I have a high tolerance and I know I do for sure. This also brings me to another point I think is really interesting. I've been in the recreational market. I've been making infusions for a decade, and I see people who literally can't get stoned off edibles. So it's rare, but you could be one of those people if you're consuming it outrageous amounts and not feeling it. And it all comes down to the biology. Everybody's different. Everybody has a different endocannabinoid system. I don't know if you knew that. It's called an ECS. We all have one within our systems that cannabinoids bond to, different receptors. So everybody's biology is different, because I have one friend in particular who just can't get stoned on edibles, or it takes like literally 1,000 milligrams. And at that point, it's like not necessarily worth it for them. But the vast majority of people I know, it just takes a little bit. And I learned that too, selling cannabis beverages that were low dose. I literally had one thing that was 1 milligram THC and 15 CBD. So pretty balanced ratio in terms of like, shouldn't get you too stoned. And that would also get people super stoned who never consumed before. Or most of the time, honestly, it would give them a really good vibe. I also worked for another company. We had a live resin powder, 2.5 milligrams, but that was full spectrum. That still had all the terps in there, or a vast majority of the terpenes, and that 2.5 milligrams. And it also had some other cannabinoids in there, of course, so it had that nice entourage effect. So that could smack somebody really good. Again, my ex-girlfriend, she built her way up, but she would still do like 1/3 of one of those packets. And you could do the same thing at home with your homemade infusions. This is just like a pretty important topic for me to talk about, because I've been talking about it for so long when I do pop-ups in shops, when I was making cannabis cocktails in lounges. So I figured, why not talk to the Mason Pot family about it so you could dial in your own experience. Again, low and slow is the way to go. You always hear it, or I hear it all the time when I'm like, oh, so if you don't mind me asking, like, why aren't you interested? Like, why don't you like edibles? And you hear, oh, that face, like, dude. Or like, hey, the first time I had like a panic attack. I didn't know what was going on. And I'm like, so what did you take? Like, oh, my friend gave me a homemade brownie or cookie. I'm like, that is how it always seems to go. So if that's the case too, if you're making cookies, just take a little nibble. You don't need to eat the whole thing. Again, if you don't feel it that much, then wait for the next day or wait a couple hours. Like, it's not the end of the world. You're figuring out what's right for you so you can have the best experience in the long run. So that's kind of my 2 cents on finding the perfect edible dose for you. And I should tell you about my perfect edible dose and how it's changed over time as I've consumed more. I would say since kind of the beginning when I started infusing and eating edibles, my perfect dose was like 20 milligrams. So think 2 10 milligram gummies, think maybe like half to a full dropper of tincture. Now, of course, just like anything else, you start to build a tolerance. So now I would say my perfect dose, and it depends on the time of day. Sometimes I like just a little microdose, little 5 milligrams, very subtle for me. I don't really necessarily notice it, but it might just, lift the spirits a little bit. But if I'm like trying to get stoned, my perfect dose is probably 50 to 100 milligrams now. It's gone up a little bit. But again, I like switching it up, microdosing and doing that thing. So that's about it, guys. Excuse me there. Little coffee burp. I've been drinking more coffee in the past 3 months than I have probably my whole life. Kind of crazy. But I guess it's better than the amount of energy drinks I used to drink. And also I have some interesting topics on that, caffeine and cannabis. I'll do one on this channel, have it on my True Buds channel. And look at me, I keep going, guys. So thank you for hanging out till the end. If you want to check out Mason Pot, just go to masonpot.com, scroll through the website a little bit, go through the manual, see what we got going on, and just really hone in your dose. Everybody else doesn't really matter. You can't compare yourself to other people. I'm getting like deep here on life in general. I think about that. Like you can't make these comparisons. So why would you do it with somebody's edible consumption? Do you, find you, start low, start slow, and you'll have a good go. Talk soon, my fam.